Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, we talk to a representative from the Wiyot Tribal Government about a new grant from the state of California for $14 million to help the tribe address youth homelessness. Also, KEET contributor Ryan Hutson brings us a report from a recent town hall event hosted by the Institute of Justice that offered local folks a chance to address alleged county cannabis abatement issues. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. Top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. We've got a packed show tonight and absolutely no time to waste. Starting off, we're thrilled to have David Cobb from the Wiyot Tribe to talk about a new $14 million grant received by the tribe to help end youth homelessness. Welcome, David.
James, and I should start off by saying I am an employee of the Wiyot Tribe, but not an enrollee of the Wiyot Tribe.
Thank you for pointing that. There was a little bit of conversation on our social media accounts saying that maybe we were presenting whiteness by having you in here, and it was just that you are who the tribe appointed to talk about this issue, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And listen, I appreciate the sensitivity and the question, and I want to address straight up the fact that I am an employee. I report directly to the tribal administrator, Michelle Vassel, who then reports directly to the elected Wiyot Tribal Council. Mm-hmm. So I work for the Wiyot Tribe. I am the advancement manager for Dishkama tribes, or the Wiyot Tribe's Dishkama Community Land Trust. Absolutely. By the way, Dishkama means love in Salatlook, the Wiyot Tribe's ancestral language, because we're putting love back into the community. And when I say community, I mean all of our projects, James, are only within Wiyot ancestral territory. Yeah. Last thing I want to say is I am a descendant from Celts. The last time my ancestors were in right relationship with the land they inhabited was in Scotland and Ireland. And the English Empire and the enclosure movement pushed them off the land, traumatized them. They came to this continent and traumatized people, pushing them off their land. So there's trauma upon trauma. And what the Wiyot Tribe is committed to do, and what the Dishkama Community Land Trust is committed to do, is to heal the generational trauma of this land by healing the land together, both Wiyot and non-Wiyot alike, in this, our home. So I'm a guest on Wiyot territory, but I'm learning to be an appropriate guest under the leadership of the Wiyot Tribe.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And just another quick clarification on our social media, we'd also said that Michelle Vassel was going to be on the show. She couldn't make it, so we're happy to have David. And let's get started with the interview. Let's start with the bigger picture. I mean, what kinds of housing issues do tribes like the Wiyot face, and why?
Well, you know, I think it's, first of all, we know that this entire community, both, again, Wiyot and non-Wiyot alike, are in an acute housing crisis. We know that prices are skyrocketing. There is very little inventory. And with all of the different projects that are coming online, it's just going to get a lot worse. Mm-hmm. And what is specifically acutely difficult is to recognize that Wiyot people are literally being priced out of their own ancestral territory. Sure. So any opportunity we have to be able to build housing, we are always going to be prioritizing Wiyot enrollees and indigenous people first, but almost all of our projects will be big enough that will be made available for non-Wiyot after we prioritize Wiyot people.
Absolutely. Now the grant is in particular for homeless youth, is that right?
That's correct. Very exciting to say that the this is a state of California grant through HCD, Housing and Community Development. Mm-hmm. It's $14 million for both the acquisition, rehabilitation, and supportive services for, get this, James, 39 units of housing for currently houseless young people. We'll have one group aged 15 to 18 and another group 18 and a day up to 25. And this is particularly important because what I've learned is that many of our young people, when they either age out of foster care or otherwise have challenges, there are very, very few places for them to go currently. Yeah. And oftentimes they're literally shipped to Santa Rosa or Redding. So this is going to solve a very chronic problem here. And again, prioritizing Wiyot youth, but not exclusively for Wiyot youth. And wait, there's more, because that's going to include supportive services like mental health, drug and alcohol counseling, vocational counseling on site.
Wow. So all of those 39 residents will have access to those kinds of services?
That's correct.
Wow. That sounds like quite a project. Now, you mentioned before in our conversation that maybe you have a site eyeballed, but you can't disclose where that's at. Is that correct?
That's correct. I can tell you that it's in Eureka, and we will very soon be disclosing the exact location, but at this moment, I can't share with you the exact location. Are there any concerns about NIMBYism, or are you how do you feel about that process moving forward? Listen, we want to engage everywhere with neighbors and other folk, but remember, all of us are, if you live in McKinleyville, all the way to Rio del Scotia and about 40 miles inland, this is Wiyot ancestral territory. Absolutely. So, the idea of NIMBYism for a Wiyot tribal project seems a little ironic to me. That would be rich. Now, help me with this. It's Jarujiji, or how do you pronounce that? Jarujiji. And Jarujiji is the Tsleil-Waututh name for the area known as Eureka. And one of the things that I've learned, thanks to the study that I've done, is that actually means a good place to stop and rest. Okay. One of the things that's so rich about the Tsleil-Waututh language is that for the names of places, they're not named after people. They're named after the literal physical location. So it really is an invitation into a decolonization and an invitation into thinking about this land differently and about how to be on this land differently. I'll tell you, so far I've never had a Wiyot person tell me that I had to leave their ancestral territory. Yeah. I have had Wiyot people say, let us teach you how to be here differently in right relationship with the land and the forest and the salmon and the rest of creation. Well, I have to say I've been a journalist for 20 years or more in Humboldt County, and the conversation always with the Wiyot people has always been respectful, and where they extend their culture, it's usually in an educational and a welcoming way. And it seems like they inspire dialogue and healing and don't do it from a perspective that would threaten people who maybe aren't as evolved, on that issue, which I appreciate. James, I'm appreciating the context that you gave, because let's actually take one step back and recognize that Tuluwat Island, what many people once called Indian Island, but has always been Tuluwat, is the cosmological center of the Wiyot universe. It is where Wiyot people come from. And many know that was the site of a horrific massacre, and a series of massacres, actually, interrupting a world renewal ceremony. And over the course of literally over 100 years of respectful dialogue and healing, under the leadership and the direction of the Wiyot, ultimately the city of Eureka voluntarily returned Tuluwat. James, that was the first time in the history of the United States of America, anywhere in this country that we can find, that a municipality voluntarily returned land and rematriated it to a tribe. That is to say, not a result of a federal order, not as a result of litigation, but a voluntary return. And that didn't just happen. It was a result of genuine, respectful dialogue. And I also want to point out that when the Wiyot tribe regained Tuluwat Island, that they removed over 80 tons of refuse debris. It was a hazardous waste site. Yeah. The Environmental Protection Agency gave the Wiyot tribe the first ever Tribal Site Reuse Award. And that work, yes, done under the direction of the Wiyot tribe, but many non-Wiyot people were out there in hazmat suits in the muck, working together. I think that Tuluwat really was a profound shift, and it shows that land back is not merely a metaphor. It can be done, and that it's a way that we can do it together. And by healing this land together, we heal that relationship.
Well, I think it's appropriate that the center of their universe and the site of world renewal is functioning in just that way, perhaps for the relationship between the tribe and the city, that there may be a renewal in that relationship.
I think that's right, James. And what's especially interesting to me is to acknowledge that as we saw the Tuluwat return from the city of Eureka, that's public, right? Then you have Marashawak, which means where the wolf lives, down on Fields Landing, a return of about 80 acres. And there are several other projects that are in formation that I'm not at liberty to talk about yet. So there are multiple public land back projects that are underway, and Home Key, of course, is a very big one. But in addition to that, there are multiple private land back. A lot of times folks are saying, when I die as part of my estate, I want to rematriate the land. And I can help. If anybody is watching this and would like to learn more about that, I would encourage you to reach out to me and the Wiyot tribe, because that's literally what we're doing. Public, private, land back to heal the generational trauma and to meet people's needs in a restorative, regenerative manner.
If we could, real quick, we're getting low on time, but to give a broader perspective, the tribe has been doing a lot of affordable housing work, and your Dishgama, how do you pronounce it? I thought it was
Dishgama. And Dishgama, again, means love in Salatlook.
Yeah, and that is a part of a broader culture or community land trust program, correct?
That's correct. And what's really unique, James, is that Dishgama is a department of the Wiyot tribe. So yes, it's a community land trust, but it's a community land trust not just directed by indigenous people. It is that, but it's much deeper. It's literally an arm of the Wiyot sovereign nation.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, real quick, on December 6th, the City Council will be considering renaming 2030 Park as Dayas Park, I think it's pronounced. Please excuse my awful attempts at pronunciation. But I think it's Where the Cypresses Are Park. What advice do you have for the council? And why do you believe it's helpful for even just naming things like this to have that kind of, a change occur?
So remember that Salatlook is the language of the Wiyot people, and it's the language of this land. So to me, there is a genuinely spiritual invitation when we start to think about our relationship in a reciprocal manner, again, with Wiyot stewardship, to help us think about land and other life, not merely as commodities or natural resources, but actually to think about the fact that we are supposed to be in a reciprocal relationship with land and with our two-legged, our four-legged, and our feathered and our finned relatives. So when I learn about renaming ceremonies and the kind of reclaiming that's going on, it genuinely inspires me with hope, because what I know is the Wiyot people have been here since time immemorial. They will always be here, and they know how to be here. And if we are patient, and if we are humble but also dignified, we can learn how to be here differently as well.
Excellent, David. I appreciate you coming in, and in the future we'll have you or someone from the tribe back to talk more about progress on this front, and maybe we'll have more of a formal segment that we can present to people. So
I'd love that. Thank you, Jawach.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. The Institute for Justice held a recent town hall at the Mateel Community Center in Redway, offering a forum for local residents and activists to discuss Humboldt County's controversial cannabis abatement policies. The Institute recently filed a federal lawsuit against the county because of alleged abatement abuses, claiming that the county system is unfair and unconstitutional. KEET contributor Ryan Hutson was there and brings us the following report.
Humboldt County has responded to a federal lawsuit filed by the Institute for Justice regarding the county's allegedly unconstitutional enforcement of perceived code violations via its cannabis abatement program, which began in 2018. The property rights lawsuit was filed on behalf of abated county residents who were denied constitutional rights, according to the Institute for Justice lawyers, who say the group of residents they represent never grew cannabis, but also can't get their day in court. And in the meantime, they face crippling fines and cannot develop their land. Even now that cannabis cultivation is legal, elements of the former framing of the herb as a social blight still color government perception. Referencing the satellite imagery relied on to target rural parcels with identifiable greenhouses, John Ford said, "If cannabis is going to be a legal and regulated product, the illegal portion of it needed to be addressed, and it needed to be addressed in a proactive way."
Like I said, they're doing this all without probable cause. They're not inspecting your land. They're just doing sweeps with the satellite program. They're levying the fines. They're scaring the hell out of people, and they're saying, "Pay us some money and we'll go away." So we filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of all the people who have been abated, asked for their hearing, and not received one. And we've raised 5 constitutional issues in the case. When the government accuses you of something, you have a right to a meaningful opportunity to be heard. And the way they've designed this program is, one, you don't get heard at all, so it can't be meaningful. But they've structured the appeal system in a way that even if you are heard, it's not meaningful. They are accusing you without probable cause, and they post a notice in the newspaper to tell all of your neighbors that you have grown cannabis without a permit based on no proof that that's the case. And then that you appeal, they don't give you a hearing. You send images to show that there's no cannabis in your greenhouse. You tear down your greenhouse to show that the greenhouse is gone. They don't care that there's no proof of a violation. They will not dismiss the penalties. And the second one, they call it substantive due process. And basically what it means is, like, the government has no interest in what you do on your land unless you're harming someone else in the community. Because, like, the citizens are the government here, and you just don't have a right to tell people how to use their property unless they're causing some sort of outward harm to the community. And they should have to have proof that you have violated the code before they levy these fines, and they're just not doing that. Our third claim is excessive fines, and I don't think I really need to explain that one very much because these fines are insane. Like, Rhonda Olson faces $7.4 million in fines right now, and, like, I've been to her property several times. The one, it's literally a vacant piece of land. Like, and there used to be hoop houses, and decades ago, a timber company had graded some of the land, and that we have in writing from the code enforcement department, and says, we know that grading might have been there since the 80s, but then someone grew cannabis on that land, so now it all needs to be put back to its pre-cannabis state. And unless you put the land back to its pre-cannabis state, because, like, the land is somehow now, like, dirty and tainted because it's had weed on it. So unless you correct that, you're facing $7.4 million of fines. And by the way, you only have 10 days to do so. And our fourth claim is, it's called unconstitutional conditions. The government cannot withhold a benefit from you unless you agree to give up one of your constitutional rights. And whether that's your constitutional right to a hearing or the right to something on your property, the government cannot extort you into giving up your constitutional rights in exchange for a permit that you would be entitled to. The fifth claim that we brought is under the 7th Amendment, that you should have a right to a jury on these issues. And that issue of fact about whether you built the greenhouse to grow cannabis, that is something that a jury of your peers should decide, and not some law firm that the county hired. And so those are the 5 claims that we brought. We brought them on behalf of Rhonda Olson and the Thomases and Blue Graham, but we also brought them on behalf of a class of people here in Humboldt who have been affected by this program and who have asked for their chance to be heard and have been denied that right by the government. And, like, the government, we always say the government works for you guys. Literally, you guys are the government. They're just your representatives, and they should be working for you and not trying to extract as much money as they can out of the community under this question.
And they say $10,000 a day times 7 violations, that's $70,000 a day. And I went running in there. I got abated on a Thursday. I was in their office at Monday at 9 o'clock. What's up? How do we fix this? Just come onto my property. Come see, there's nothing on there. So the way they extort you is they say, you owe 70 grand a day, you're already in 6 days in, whatever that math is. Good luck. You got money for a lawyer. You can go to a hearing, but you're going to lose because we hire the judge that's going to hear the case, and he's going to side with us, even though we have no actual evidence of what we're accusing you of. But you could just come and pay us $30,000, and you could sign this compliance agreement saying you won't sue us, pay us $30,000 and sign the settle agreement. Don't go to a hearing because you're going to lose. That's extortion.
Referring to the lawsuit as premature and meritless, the county's legal defense denies the allegations entirely, saying that the whole story reflects appropriate and timely efforts to cure plaintiffs' violations, which were either fully resolved or remaining pending, according to the county's filed response.
I think the important thing here is that there are a lot of people in Humboldt County who are just like really hurting at a human level, and they've come out here. A lot of them live off the grid, and they moved to Humboldt for the right to be left alone, and they achieved that for decades. And now, after legalization, the county thought that it would be making more money than it was, or whatever their motive is, and they have used that as a hook to reach out through their satellite images and through their code enforcement to reel these people in and try to squeeze them for every dollar that they have. And there's no constitutional process in place, and we brought this action to try to make sure that the county will comply with the federal constitution. If there is a nuisance on a property, then the county can come in and force people to correct that nuisance. But they can't be using their nuisance abatement program for cash generation and just extracting as much money as they can through coercive and extortive means out of the community.
Wind blowing off Humboldt County shores could generate carbon-free electricity within a decade. This Tuesday, December 6th, offshore wind energy developers will bid on the federal lease auction of a 206 square mile area, 21 miles west of Eureka.
This region has the best offshore wind potential really in the country in terms of the quality of the resource. It is very complementary of solar, which we have in abundance in California, because the wind picks up especially in the late afternoon and evening when the sun goes down, but when all of us are going into our houses and turning on our appliances and charging our cell phones and charging our electric cars.
In developing the West Coast's first offshore wind farm, the auction winner could float up to 150 turbines, generating up to 1.8 gigawatts of power and providing roughly 4% of California's electricity supply. But to deliver that climate-friendly power to electricity customers, California will have to build new transmission lines. Headline Humboldt's Eric Black explains.
California generates grid electricity using these energy sources, then distributes that power to cities and rural areas.
Humboldt County is connected to the rest of the main grid by what I would consider capillaries. The main ones are two 115 kilovolt transmission lines that run to the east and connect in the Redding or Cottonwood area. And some of the big power lines that run up and down the Central Valley, for example, would be sort of the main arteries. Those are maybe 500 kilovolts, multiple times larger than the 115 kilovolt lines that connect the Humboldt Bay region to the Central Valley. Transmission lines tend to be largest in areas where you're trying to move bulk amounts of power from generation sources to the main substations.
The floating windmills will create a new generation source that was not anticipated when Humboldt County's current transmission infrastructure was built. Those lines carry small loads of power west to Humboldt's roughly 137,000 people to deliver large volumes of power in the opposite direction from the wind farm source east to electricity customers statewide. The state or developer might build new 500 kilovolt lines.
One option for transmission would be overland to the east to connect with the main transmission corridors in the Central Valley, and then from there moving to the south down to the Bay Area and other areas that have significant energy consumption. The area between Humboldt Bay and the Central Valley is rugged mountainous terrain. This is a very seismically active area. It's characterized by frequent landslides and forested area that has high wildfire. On top of that, if you're going to run a transmission line, you need a right-of-way to do that. And the existing rights-of-way are not wide enough in order to run the larger transmission lines that would be needed to move power. So larger rights-of-way would need to be identified. Another option could be to look at an overland route that moves more to the south, so maybe following something similar to the Highway 101 corridor to get essentially down to the same location, down to the Bay Area.
To sidestep the challenges posed by building lines over land, the state or winning developer could connect wind farm energy to Bay Area electricity infrastructure by burying a roughly 300-mile cable underneath the ocean floor.
One is a near-to-shore route that essentially hugs the coast for a portion of the way. And there are a lot of challenges there associated with undersea canyons. You can think of it as something similar to a river valley canyon, but submerged. There are flows of water that move in and out or up and down those canyons, and often there are debris flows within them as well. So that makes them very physically challenging to install a cable across them. They're also very important ecologically. There's just a lot of sea life that lives in and around those kinds of canyons. There are a number of marine protected areas along the coast between Humboldt Bay and the San Francisco Bay Area. Each one of those areas has its own set of guidelines for what is possible within them. Some of them may be very restrictive in terms of the possibility of having an undersea cable run through them. The other possibility is running an undersea cable much further from shore in deeper water. Particularly, it avoids the canyons. If you're going far from shore, though, you're going in very deep water, something maybe on the order of 10,000 feet. While it's possible to do undersea cables at that depth, it's really challenging to lay them, and it's really challenging to maintain them.
Arnie Jacobson estimates it will cost $1.7 to $3 billion to build new lines along one of the 4 proposed routes. In the meantime, the winning bidder in Tuesday's auction could build a smaller project that will not require transmission upgrades. That starter project would not export electricity out of area, but could help Humboldt County meet its goal of buying exclusively local renewable energy by 2030. Eric Black, Headline Humboldt, Eureka.
That's it for tonight. I'd like to express gratitude tonight for our freelance crew who does such great reporting. I mean, I think we had in-depth stories that no other entity had this week, so I really appreciate the work of Eric Black and Ryan Hutson. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. Stay informed.